only really as powerful as the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell others. We can't have any more impact than what we believe is possible. So if we could, for a moment, just let go of everything else and just be human, then what would be possible? What's on the, like if you've got your arms like this here is a garden of possibility. This is everything that can be achieved, everything that I can do, everything that in the world is possible, humanly possible, celestially possible. And then there's a wall. And then outside of that wall is everything that is impossible. And some people have a very tiny wall, very close-knit wall. Some people seem to have no wall at all, and they often take quite large risks, and they're a bit frightening to be around. But we've all got possibility, impossibility. And I want to talk about moving the barriers, looking at things differently. So I start with why, because I've done quite a lot of what people might list as crazy stuff in my life. The first thing is I'm addicted to appearing on reality TV shows. So far, I'm 50 next year. So far, I've managed a grand total of 2, okay? It's all good. It's all going well. I do one every 20 years. I don't want to get too excited. So far, I've done Blind Date. Do you remember Blind Date? That's like Take Me Out, but if you haven't had plastic surgery. So I've done Blind Date, which was lovely. I met Scylla. I met Graham. My date was, I was a picker, so I was guaranteed a holiday. I met John from Leeds, and we went to Austria. And John from Leeds climbed out of the toilet window and left me to go for a McDonald's. So my date was on the worst date in the best of blind date for the next 9 years in the worst date section. I was teaching at the time. I was a teacher, and my kids would come in and we'd share news from home. And one of my children said, "We saw you get dumped last night, miss." And I'm like, "Yes, all right, Kirk, thank you very much." And Kirk said, don't worry, miss. My dad said he wouldn't say no. And I'm like, that is so inappropriate. Actually, which one is your dad? Sorry. So Blind Date was a complete disaster, 9 years of hell. And so I waited for 20 years before making my next big jump into reality TV, and then I did The Apprentice. And that went equally badly. And in 20 years' time, Love Island. But my feeling in this show was like, I want to win. I want to make a difference. I want to win. So when they say, we need a volunteer, I'll do it. Because, what's the worst thing that can happen? Of course I'm going to volunteer. That's why I've come here. And then when it all goes wrong, it's incredibly upsetting and awful. But actually, the interesting thing isn't the journey. It's not the reason why I did it in the first place. It's not the fact that I was on a show. It's why I was on that show. It's why I did it. And partly it was because I wanted to make a difference. That's been a kind of mantra. But also it was because of great leadership, of people like you. Because the person I was, the child I was, the woman I was prior to that was not someone who would stand up and volunteer for a crazy task like that at all. This is my year 1 class photo. When I showed my husband this, he said, "Oh, is that you on the back row next to the kid with a huge afro? Looks like there should be a 1970s Soul Train." And I'm like, "No, I am the kid with the big afro." And far on this side, Miss Robinson is in a white top, one of the head teacher. And on the other side, in brown, in chocolate brown, is Mrs. Cook, my class teacher. Mrs. Cook never said, "I love you," but there was no doubt in my mind that she did. That's her uniform. She wore that every day, brown. Long sleeves, long polo neck top, long brown smock, brown shoes. She lived in it, brown. Brown fringe, brown hair, everything brown. And this is the woman, this is the reason I became a teacher. I remember when we did Christmas, and we were making this big display on a wall, and I was in her class for 3 years, so I think it was the first one, and we'd put shepherds and wise men and gold and Frankenstein and a mermaid, and all this stuff had gone up, and there was a big gap where the star was going to be. And in my class, we had this hilarious joke, if you're 6, which is you point to the wall, and you can use this at home, take this. You point to the wall and you go, "Look at that nail there." And everyone looks at the wall, and it's this nail here. Hilarious if you're 5 and you only do it once. Not so funny when it's happening every 10 minutes from 30 kids. So she calls me over, and she used to call us things like architects, engineers, come together, ladies and gentlemen. She used to sort of project things onto us. And she called me over and said, "Stand here, I don't want to alarm the others." And I'm like, what's that mean? And she told me about how the display's finished, and she wanted to put the star up, and we put pastel on the star and sprayed the star gold, but the star wouldn't stay up. sellotape, string, glue, staples, blue tack, nothing was keeping the star up. And if we couldn't get the star up, the Christmas display wasn't finished and we couldn't have Christmas. So it was a major disaster. Have you got any ideas? And I've got nothing. I mean, I don't even know why she's asked me. Why would you? I don't know. You're the adult. Work it out. But as I look at the space where the star is, suddenly I see this 4-inch nail poking out of the wall that Mrs. Cook has clearly come in early and stuck in the wall. So I suddenly think, oh, I'm a genius. I've had an idea. So I say, oh, Mrs. Cook, I know what we could do. We could stick it on that nail there. And she says, that's very funny, but we're not doing that joke at the moment. This is a serious matter and we need an idea. And so I retreat back into myself because I've got it wrong. I've made a mistake. I thought she meant, she thinks, hold on, no, I didn't make a mistake. She thinks I've made, but I haven't. But I don't want to say that because it's real. I just stay quiet and wait. And she waited too, just patiently waiting. Any ideas? Anything else? I really need help with this. And eventually, I was insistent. I said, no, it's not my nail, it's the nail. There's a nail. Look, look at the nail. It's massive. There's a huge nail. And she finally did this stage glance and gasp. And she turned to the class and said, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? This girl has just saved Christmas. And I literally grew an inch on the spot. I literally grew an inch. I mean, I'm 50. That happened when I was 6, and I can feel it. She used to do story time. She used to say to me, she used to say to all of us, who are you going to be? Not what are you going to do, who are you going to be? I didn't really get the question, but I'm just enamored with this woman talking at me, and she's amazing. She's like this angel in chocolate. And I looked at her and I said, I want to be just like you. And she said, oh, you mean you want to be a teacher? And I literally remember thinking, I do not have enough brown clothes to pull this teaching lock off. I don't have the wardrobe. But I'm like, yeah, sure. And she said, you should definitely do that. You should do it. You would make a fantastic teacher. And that was critically important because it was like she put a piece of elastic around my waist and tied it to this stake that she planted 20 years in my future. And the next 20 years was me, against all odds, impossibly being pulled towards this stake, this tree on the outside of my wall of what was possible. And suddenly the wall moved. We want to feel that we make a difference. You were saying it there, I want to make a difference. But also, we work for the NHS. So we want to see proof of difference. We want to see data. We want to see impact. Everything has to be measured. And the problem with that is that it leaves little room for faith. Because if we're talking about generational change, it's not going to be seen in a 9-month project. Mrs. Cook saved my life and doesn't even know. I did go back to see her when I was 18. I was training to be a teacher, and I went back to school. And there she was in the same freaking outfit, the same brown smock. Bit fatter, a bit older, but same clothes. And she's scrunched down like this, talking to this snotty kid with a basin haircut. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Mrs. Cook. And so I rush up to her, I'm like, Mrs. Cook, it's me! It's me! Oh my gosh, it's you, it's me! And she says, hello, who are you? And I'm like, I'm gutted. I'm like, okay, I'm like the most important student you've ever had, but okay, it's fine. So I said, it's me, I was in your class, I was the one that saved Christmas. Do you remember that? I wrote that story about your husband and his car. Do you remember that? I'm going to be a teacher just like you because of you. You've changed my life. And she said, are you doing well? And I said, yeah, I'm doing fantastic. And it's because of you. And she said, I'm so pleased. And then she went back and bent down and spoke to the snotty kid with the basin haircut. And a little bit of me died, if I'm honest. Because I wanted her to dance with me. I wanted her to sing with me. I wanted her to celebrate with me. But Mrs. Cook was doing what she's always done, focusing on the people that need her most. And she was able to do that for so long because she paid into herself as well. I can't see her treating well-being like something that's an optional extra to get that far in education. This is me at school. This is me at school. This is me at home. This is me looking after 4 of my brothers and sisters, while the other one takes a photo probably. That was my life on the streets with them. I was responsible for those kids. But can you see the difference between the child at school and the child at home? Because we talk about balance, work-life balance, and balance is not something to aim for. I always think of balance, I think about a kid with a yoke, like walking across a field, like carrying wooden buckets of milk and no shoes on and trying not to spill them. Who wants that? It's not a goal to aim for balance. You're the same person at home as you are at work. You just wear different clothes. You sit at a different desk. So if something's rubbish at home, guess what? Something's going to be rubbish at work. And yet what we want is we want to close that off, and we want people to be at work. I remember being I went to a theatre school for a while, and the first meeting, the theatre teacher says to us all, one thing you need to remember, don't bring your shit on the stage. And it was just this whole thing, we don't want to know what's happening in your life. That's not important. So then you're forced to live this two lives. And one life where people need you has to take a back seat. And I don't know if that's how you make a difference. Who includes work in their idea of success? What does it look like? You had a great definition. When we spoke, you said helping people to do things to help other people. There was this kind of ripple and cannon effect going on as well. And this is interesting because I asked this fella, young fella, my lad, I said, so what are you helping them to do specifically? Do you set an agenda for that? And he said, no, it's whatever they need. So there's a complete lack of control there, isn't there? There's like complete autonomy. What if they do the wrong thing? Who's got children, their own personal children that they've grown or stolen or adopted? Isn't it awful when they start making their own decisions? When they don't just become a mini you? Isn't it horrible? It's like a loss. But actually, that's the whole point, isn't it, of growing? Who thinks success has got something to do with inspiring someone else? Being a point of inspiration, having an impact on someone else, yeah? Yeah, inspiration. So imagine you're like walking around Liverpool or your area in a few years' time and you see someone who you worked with or was one of your clients or patients or whatever, and they're driving a BMW with the top down, and they pull over and go, oh my God, it's you! It's you! Oh, I'm so glad I'm seeing you. It's because of you. You made so much difference in my life. You believed in me, and now I'm the biggest crack cocaine dealer in Liverpool. I've got a Beamer. I've got women all over the place. I'm killing it. Thank you for believing in me. And you're going to be like, yes. Or are you? Because we kind of want to create what we are, don't we? It's like, I'm really pleased for you as long as you're doing everything that I think is a good thing to do. And it's scary when we let go of that. It's scary when we hand it over to others. But here's the thing about it. Until we can get real about ourselves, until we can identify, acknowledge, celebrate even the success in ourselves, we are not going to be able to have enough impact and create the impact we desire in other people. It's just not possible. You've got a civic innovator has to fill from the saucer, not the cup. If you're great at giving, that's fantastic. But if you can't receive, if you can't acknowledge, you're not receiving anything. And then you become like an iPhone leader. You're all right for 3 years, then the battery's knackered and we have to chuck you away and get another one. We're better than that. You're worth more than that. These statements, when I say, are you a success, what you do, these are the things that go through our head. Oh, I'm not good enough. Has anyone ever thought that? I'm not good enough. Who's thought that before? Who said it out loud? Who said it this morning? You know, I get up and do talks quite a lot. I travel all over the world, and people say to me, do you get nervous? And I say, yeah, I feel sick every time, up until the point where I remind myself it's not about me. Because if I feel sick, if I'm nervous standing up here and I have my iPad and my notes and all this stuff to help me not make a mistake, because I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want you to laugh at me. I don't want you to say, oh, you're doing it wrong, or notice that I dropped something or I fell off the stage. I don't want to look bad. All of that is about me. It's about me looking okay. It's about me being safe. And actually, you guys got out of bed this morning and turned up to hear a speaker. And if I make it about me, it's not about you. It's never about you. And that's the thing about leadership. It's not about you. I mean, it's about you in the fact that you need to take care of yourself, but you need to trust unconditionally, but you have to earn the trust of everyone that you trust. Leadership sucks. That's why you get paid more money. It's compensation. It's a rubbish job. And when we've got this narrative going on in the background, and I'm speaking from experience, this just limits you. It keeps you playing small. And we think no one notices because we're so good at filtering, because we're British. We're so good at filtering. My daughter's doing GCSEs now, Trinity. She came home the other month and she said, my math teacher went on a date last night. And I'm like, oh my gosh, GCSEs? Why are you talking about his private life? Quadratic equations, let's get moving here. And she said, oh no, he didn't tell us, but we knew. And I'm like, so clearly, he's usually quite miserable. It's maths, who's going to enjoy that? But last night, he met a man or a woman or someone, and he came in the next day, let's do some maths, oh yeah. And they can see it. Of course you can tell when people are on form and when they're not. Hiding it is ridiculous. Hiding it is crazy. But we learn to do that, and then we impose this culture on other people. When was the last time you said, right, it's 2 o'clock on Friday, I'm going. I'm taking some time to see my kids and do well-being. And I think all of you should do this at some point. Obviously not now, because I'm going. But at other times, you should do that too. You know, what an example that would be. But God, blimey, can you imagine walking away and leaving? Because we're in this misunderstanding place where we think that we control everything and we have the impact to really make a difference to keep it going. And what that does is it stops us from taking a risk. It stops us from having a go at something that might not work. It makes us put language and data and projects and second and third and fourth accountability around any decision we make because it might not work and we don't want it to not work because then we look silly. But you can't learn from your mistakes until you make some. If you aren't prepared to put your neck out there, then no one else is going to do it either. And I know it's not like my job. I'm a teacher. I'm in education. You know, I make a mistake, things go wrong. You make a mistake, our lives are in your hands. I get that. But I'm not talking about risking people's lives. I'm talking about risking a connection with someone in your team. I'm talking about risking listening to people, making them feel heard. I'm talking about risking doing something fun together or encouraging people to see themselves for what they can give from their personal values rather than being a cog in a machine. It's different. I actually have this up around my house, in offices with teams. I heart mistakes. And then people go, you've spelt it wrong? I'm like, that's the point. But I suppose if you have to explain it, it's not really working, is it? Mistakes are things that have gone wrong. And here's the deal. If you make a mistake in my team, if you make a mistake, even while we're doing activities, you have to acknowledge that mistake like this. Yay! Because I'm trying to reframe how people feel about mistakes. And what I'm trying to do is re-trigger that panic stage of mistake because things just go wrong from there. We need a space where people can get it wrong. You know, the mistakes that people make outside of work are always more humiliating and more painful and bigger hurdles to get over than the ones they're ever going to make inside work. Because if you lose your job, you get another one. If if something goes wrong, you do something else. But if you lose a partner, if you lose a child, your life's finished at that point. It has to be reinvented as something else. So where is it okay to make mistakes? When is it okay to make mistakes? When do you give yourself space to make mistakes? These 3 circles are from a fantastic TED Talk by Bill Urquhart. And he talks about our need for control, our need to be in control. This is the circle at the bottom. But the thing about control is that you can't grow from control. I mean, it's comfortable, isn't it? You're all right. You're sat at home, you've got a duvet on, you're not going to want to move. Control doesn't give you opportunities to grow. At the other end of the spectrum is chaos. Chaos, says Bill Urquhart. Chaos is an awful place. As soon as you find yourself in chaos, the first thing you do is try and get back in control. Immediately. Death of someone in your family, that brings chaos. Losing a partner, a relationship ending, that's chaos. Feeling that you're out of control, losing a job, that's chaos. Here's the thing, though, about chaos is that when you're in there, there's a possibility, if you can stand, to look at things from a different position, but we don't want to do that because it's chaos. We want to get back to control. But in between these two, in between control and everything working beautifully and chaos and nothing working beautifully, is complexity. And that is where growth happens. That's where you can grow. In that moment where you realize your cupcakes are crap. In that moment where you realize your parenting lacks. In that moment where you realize that what you wanted to do as a success is not what you've ended up doing. You don't feel that you're a success. That's the place where you can grow from. Complexity is a gift. It's a complete gift if you can stand there. Now, some people get coached into complexity. Some people get forced into complexity. But the strongest element is when you can choose to stand in complexity. Mostly what I get is people saying, you're an inspiration, you're inspirational, and that's so kind, thank you. And I love that. And my question back to you is, that's great. What have I inspired you to do? Because inspire is a verb. You can't sit on your backside and be inspired. If that's the case, I've just piqued your interest. It's not the same as inspiration. Inspiration galvanizes you into action. People, the final group, the people who I really live for, really, the people I do this for, are the people, and often it's afterwards. It's an email or a tweet or on my website later. Because of what I've heard, I do more of this, or I do less of this. Because of what I heard, I live differently. That's that's really, inspiring people is a wonderful thing. But there are kids like me who don't have heroes. I had 5 everyday heroes, and today there are adults that are struggling with a story that is determining them. They are only as powerful as the story they tell, and the story they're telling themselves is they're not good enough. And that's not good enough. In this place where I go, I do coaching there, there's a bathroom, and in the bathroom it says, please leave this bathroom as you would expect to find it. And I thought, that's not good enough. That's not what we're doing. So I graffitied the sign, and I changed it to, please leave this bathroom better than you would expect to find it. And then I left me Tampax on the windowsill. That was my little, give an example of what I mean. So anyway, the next time I went back, there was a deodorant there. I thought, it can't be a mistake. Someone has bought into my vision of leaving the planet better than when we found it. The next time I went back, a fake pot plant. Ha, the revolution has begun. We're on. The next time I went, an inspirational quote on the wall. That's when a new momentum had happened. And the last time I was there, it's like a nurture room. You've got sofas in there, everything's been painted, there's people crying, people giving biscuits out. But this is the point, I can't change the world on my own. That's ridiculous. I need to enlist help. I can't change an organization on my own. I can't change a team on my own. I'm barely keeping it together, trying to change myself. But actually, together, we're stronger. So what do those accountable conversations look like? How do we enroll people in that way? Who are your everyday heroes? One of the things that I remember from my childhood, from my 5 everyday heroes, is the sense of belonging right off the bat. So in school, and I've noticed this in businesses, in religions, in churches, not so much religions, in separate churches, there's like this system, and it's the 3 Bs. It's always the 3 Bs, but they're in different orders. So I've seen some places where it's believe, behave, belong, but usually it's behave. If you're going to be part of this cult, you've got to behave in this way. This is how we behave. And it's something that other people have decided, and we're all going to do it, but this is how we behave. And if you behave in that way, then you must also believe in the system. You must believe in the system and the way the system works. And if you behave in that way and believe in the system, then you can belong. But the problem with that is that belonging is the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Belonging is a basic human need. It's not needy, it's a need. So if people don't feel they belong, then you've got them jumping through hoops in order to belong. And also the problem is that, for me, certainly gangs don't require this behave and believe. You're in. You're in. And if someone like is abusive towards you, the whole gang just show up. There's no question. They're there. They've got your back. People like us do things like this. There's a culture. But what I noticed is that the people in my life, 'cause it was 5 teachers, but to be honest, there was a cast of accidental saviours surrounding them as well. And what I noticed about them is that they started from a point of belonging. They made me feel like I belonged first. No question, you're in. You're valued, you're valuable, we rate you, we acknowledge you as a person, you're in. And because I felt like I belonged, my behaviour started to change. Because they belonged, they believed in me. I started to feel like maybe I was worthy. And I started to change the way I behaved. I wasn't violent all the time. I wasn't angry all the time. And then eventually I began to believe this vision of success that they held for me. I began to believe it was possible. So my wall around my garden of possibility, well, it was a hologram. It didn't even grow. It just wasn't there. It was one I built up inside my own head. But belonging, like, literally melts things down. And the thing I noticed about those teachers, instant loyalty. If they made me feel like I belonged, instant loyalty from me. When you grow up in an abusive situation, or if you're married to an abusive partner, or you're in a home where there's an alcoholic, or anything like that, you learn to read body language and facial expression really, really quickly, and really, really well. Because you're looking for, what have I said or what have I done that triggers this? If I do this, that will happen, so I'll try and do this instead. It's survival instinct the entire time. It's rabbit in headlights the entire time. It's hypervigilance the entire time. So I learned that. I spent the first 20, 30 years of my life on hypervigilant alert, waiting for the next person to try and hurt me. And when you do that, when you have this immediate distrust and you do that, it takes a lot of noise to break through that. It takes consistency. It takes ACE relationships. That's my acronym, ACE. I didn't know that ACE also stood for Adverse Childhood Experiences. My ACE stands for relationships that are ACE are full of authenticity, consistent to the end, and embedded with high expectation. They're authentic, they're consistent, and they are embedded with high expectation. There is nothing worse than people not expecting very much of you. There's nothing worse than that. I mean, I hate the whole, I've got a great X Factor backstory. Maybe I should go on X Factor. That would be my, it's like, I was born a poor black child. I hate that. I mean, it's true, but it is, I hate the kind of run up to that. But actually, belonging for me was really tricky because there was just so many groups. What do we call the kids who are poor? What's the polite term for those up here? What do you call the section of society that are poor? Disadvantaged. Okay, that's nice. What else? Less privileged. Oh, okay, yeah, that's good. Less privileged. What else? Vulnerable. Sometimes we talk about people being vulnerable. Personally, because I'm in education, I don't like to use any terms that I'm not happy to say to the face of a 5-year-old. So, Mark, seeing as you're disadvantaged and vulnerable, I'm going to put you on yellow table. All right, love. Great. Mark's now, he's up for it now. He's like, yeah, yellow table with a slow eater sit. And so I use the term, for me, there's 2 types. And don't forget, I'm in education, so I don't know if this is going to translate. There's 2 types of clientele I have. There's chaos navigators and order navigators. Some people outside of my space, outside of the space that we share, navigate order. And what I notice about some businesses, some offices, some schools, they are set up for people who navigate order. In my experience, it's kids who know they're loved, they know they're safe. It's my kids, the middle-class couscous-eating kids who come into school knowing, oh, yeah, let's do a challenge because my life isn't going to fall apart. That's all great. We design a system around them. But also, you've got chaos navigators, which I was, who outside of school or outside of work is trying to handle enormous pressure. And then comes into a place where there are expectations in play. If belonging comes first, you get to have courageous conversations. I have this thing about values being on the wall. Because when I go into places, and I do leadership coaching, I'll go in and I'll say, can I ask your team about the values? And they go, yeah, you do that. And so I'll go up to one of the team and I'll go, can you tell me about the values? And they'll go, oh yeah, they're on the wall. And I'm like, oh, thank you, okay. Can you tell me about the values? I think one of them's courage. I think it might be, I'm not sure. But they're on the wall. And we get this kind of, one place I go, believe, dream, achieve together. They're their values. And I know that because they're in 6-foot letters across a whole side of a building, and still no one can tell me what they are on the inside. Because they're on the outside and everyone's on the inside. And I always look at these values when they're up, and I always, especially when they're that big, and I think, WTF, which stands for, who's that for? Who's that for? Is it for the team? So you're saying, look, believe, dream, and achieve together. Is it an order? Is it for the people who kind of come and check you out and inspect you so they can go, hey, up, these lot believe, dream, and achieve together. Well, we're fine. Let's go down the pub. Just give them a top grade. Is it for the people who buy from you, the people who use you? I mean, who's it for? And if it's for the people on the ground, then why don't they own it? We need to tie in who we are with what we do. That's when impact happens. We need to tie in our personal values with the values of the company or the office that we're in. We need to have that together. But the problem is we undermine ourselves all the time, partly because we're British, I guess, but partly because we're so good at thinking good stuff about others and not so good stuff about us. There is always higher and better starts with being human first. It starts with being defined by your soul, not by your role. It starts with meeting people where they are, not expecting them to come to you. It starts with thinking about and feeling the felt need that people have and speaking into that. There is always higher and better. We just get to decide what that looks like or not. Or we get to do what's highest and best, what we get paid for, what the computer says. We get paid the same no matter which we do. And to be honest, let's be honest, if you go for highest and best, you stick your head above the parapet, you tend to get shot at. It's painful. It's miserable. It hurts. But you get to choose. So what are you worth? What are you worth? How good are you at judging people? Or not judging, maybe? How good are you at seeing someone and not holding any judgment on them? We judge others, and we also judge ourselves. But if we could learn to notice and describe without any judgment, that's where we can start being human first. That's where we give people an in to grow. That's where complexity isn't painful, it's curiosity. That's where it could work. We're so worried. Earlier on we were talking and you said there's things that, I don't talk about because I don't know what people will think about them. We live, that's, of course we do. We don't want to be judged. We're terrified of it. We've seen what we do to other people. We don't want people doing that to us. But this is keeping us locked in fear. It's fear driving your bus. You're giving a 3-ton killing machine to fear. Nothing good comes of us leading through fear from a position of being afraid. And more than this, it's not what I want for the next generation of leaders. It's not what I want for my kids. There has to be a better way. And I love this picture of a bowl. It's called kintsugi. It's a Japanese art form. When something is broken or you break it deliberately sometimes, you repair it, but you repair it with gold leaf. And what happens is the broken bits make the bowl more beautiful than when it was whole. That's you. Your scars, your broken bits are the very thing that make you even more valuable as a human. Because we all have broken bits. And we're all doing a really good job of trying to keep it together. But what if empathy replaced fear? What would that look like? What if our values were so clear that we didn't have to have them on the wall because people could feel it when we walked in? What if they were tied in with people's personal values? What would that look like? One of the things I encourage leaders to do in particular is to build a lighthouse. If you're out on that sea in a rickety rowing boat and it's pitch black and it's pouring down, pelting down with sharp rain, and there's thunder and there's lightning and the waves are coming up 20 foot and you're out there with one oar missing and a hole in your boat, that lighthouse is the only thing that stops you from drifting off into the distance. That lighthouse is the only thing that stops you from crashing into the rocks and dying. That lighthouse is your values. It needs to be bold, it needs to be verbalized, it needs to be visible, it needs to be lived, because that lighthouse is the only thing that's going to save you. Your values have got, your personal values have got to be front and center the whole time so that every decision you make flows from those values. True happiness is when what you think and feel is in alignment with what you say and do. And when leaders take that stance, it creates confidence and autonomy and freedom for people to stand in that position themselves. So I want to end with a friend of mine and Mark's, Dave McPartlin, who's a head over in Fleetwood. He's got stupidly reckless swag. One of his kids wanted to be a pop star. So he said, I wonder what that would look like. And they went for Christmas #1. They doorstepped Chris Evans to try and get Chris Evans to get him on Radio 2. And good gravy, it worked. They're all dressed in elf outfits. He drove through the night from Fleetwood to London with 3 kids that weren't his in the back of his car. It's bonkers. But they got to number 63. And when I was in their nurture room, I said to the girl who had the idea, are you disappointed? Because you're aiming for #1, you got to number 63. And she said, are you mad? I went to London. I saw Theresa May. I was on the Chris Evans breakfast show. This child in this area that everyone would say is deprived and disadvantaged suddenly said, this is the flip side. This is what I saw. So my invitation to you is to disrupt. Be a positive disruptor. Dave's swag, after getting a Christmas #1, was Britain's Got Talent. And not only did he make it, not only did he get the first golden buzzer ever, he created something that is so heart-rendering for fantastic. It encourages us all to aim for higher and better.